Well, I hope everyone had a good respite with whether it's tea or coffee or emails. We're going to move into the next part of our program, which is the Leadership Roundtable. As many of you may recall, the Leadership Roundtable is comprised of some of our winners of the Marine Environment Protection Awards. And we're just delighted that we will be able to hear their views now and then recognize their accomplishments later at our awards ceremony at 6 o'clock. Our moderator for this particular part of the agenda is Jan Hagen Andersen, who's the Business Development and Public Affairs Officer for DNV Maritime. Jan Hagen, thanks so much for moderating the next panel.
Thank you so much, Carlene, for introducing the panel, and I look forward to have an interesting discussion. And first of all, I want to congratulate all the panelists with their awards, well deserved, and hopefully we'll also hear more about what got them to get the award in the first place. And also very thanks to NAMEPA and Carlene and Joe and everyone else for arranging the annual meeting and also allowing myself to moderate this very distinguished panel. With that, I'd like to just say a couple of words about myself. I am part of the DNV Maritime Business Development Team based in Houston, Texas. Been with the organization for 15 years and is definitely focused on the environmental compliance part, safety issues facing the shipping community and the maritime stakeholders at large. So this is definitely a topic that also is close to my heart. So with that, I don't really expect any I don't have a presentation. I'll just make some opening remarks, and I would like to ask the panelists if they could, turn their camera on, and then we can all start the round table discussion. So welcome to our distinguished panelists. And what I want to start with was just a little bit setting the scene as we go into this panel discussion and the roundtable. So as I say, I don't have a presentation, but I wanted to show a short video from DNV, especially in regards to one of the key challenges facing the industry these days, related to the decarbonization and reducing the environmental footprint of the industry. As we heard in the future vision panel, there is a lot of other challenges as well facing the industry, and hopefully each of the panelists can give their views on the issues facing their organization and their company. So Cecilia, are we able to play the video? Yes, it seems like something's happening.
For the maritime industry, for all of us, this is more than a moment of change. It's a time of transformation. Never have the decisions we face been so complex, nor have their consequences ever mattered more. The maritime industry is uniting behind the common goal of a carbon-neutral tomorrow. To get there, decisions from vessel design to fuel choice need to be made today. You are not facing these challenges alone. Cross-sector, regulatory, and international collaboration will enable us to shape a brighter future. A flexible fuel approach will be the solution. An open mind will be key, and a joint understanding of what matters most. It's not just about ensuring future compliance or competitiveness. It's bigger than that. It's about shaping the future for our industry, for the people we care for, for the world we live in. As the trusted voice to tackle global transformations, DNV is here to provide practical solutions and advice to help you solve the grand challenge of our time. Inspired and informed by our expertise, you will be empowered to make smarter business decisions. Together we can turn uncertainty into confidence.
All right, thank you for that. And of course, there is a little bit of a marketing plug there at the end, but I think the key message is that the key is to solving the issues facing our industry is collaboration. And I think the organization like NAMEPA and a lot of the companies participating in this annual meeting and are members of NAMEPA is a great forum to facilitate this collaboration. So what I'd like to say is that for those who participated or listened to the session before the coffee and tea break, I think we had some excellent points from Admiral Mugger on the supply chain issue facing industry and the sort of focus on the industry in the news lately, both good and bad in that sense, and how the industry can improve our images. Also the sort of risks and opportunities with the smart ship, the connected ship, and how the data we use and the connections need to be verified and be preferred integration as well. I think Jenny Grasso from Bankrom also focused on the increased focus on compliance and enforcement of existing and the future regulation. This is also something the industry needs to focus on as well. Longji already discussed this sort of focus on reducing the greenhouse emissions, both in the short term and the long term for industry, which is definitely one of the greatest transformations in the industry that we see. Thomas Franklin from Fairchild discussed about, especially on the seafarer, their well-being, the competence development and recruiting the seafarers in the future is also going to be a critical issue for the future of shipping. And I think then also Duane Brown from CLIA focused on the risk of recovering of a very visible part of the maritime industry from the COVID epidemic and how that also faces the industry. So with that, I would like to give the word to our winners and our panelists, and we'd like each one of you to give a short introduction about yourself, your company, and also why you think you won the award and what is the key issues facing your company in sort of making the transformation and the changes in the industry. And I'll start with Andrew, just sort of in alphabetical order here. And of course, Andrew, you won the Innovation Environment Award. So can you discuss a little bit about Ecochlor, your company, and the issues facing you?
Well, good afternoon and good evening for some of us, and there may even be the odd good morning out there somewhere. Ecochlor is a ballast water system manufacturer. We make a unique technology based on the use of chlorine dioxide to treat ballast water. And we all know about the long-running saga for ballast water treatment with the original IMO regulations originally being put forward in 2004 and not achieving ratification until more than a decade later. Ecochlor was one of the early players in the market. We did our first installation in around 2004. So we have a long track record, but no technology company can afford to rest on its laurels. And even though we already enjoyed one of the greenest footprints, we consume very little power in our treatment system, for example, we felt that the future requirements for even lower power consumption, coupled with some of the practical lessons that we learned from ship owners, crew, operating systems around the planet for the last 16, 17 years, told us that we needed to take another step. And so the decision was taken some little while ago to move to be able to offer 3 different types of ballast water treatment system. Our original system with the filtration and the chlorine dioxide treatment, a filterless system, a fully filterless system to be able to cope with those situations where the challenge water facing the vessel was particularly, well, one expression I heard used was chewy. So lots of stuff in it. So a particularly chewy amount of ballast water, which can play havoc with filtration. And then, of course, a hybrid option for those who want the option to be able to use filtration or not use filtration as may best suit the vessel operation. And so we undertook a program and to develop that, take that through the relevant type approval processes and US Coast Guard approval processes. We now have our IMO approval for it. We are very much hoping that we receive our Coast Guard certification for that variant at the end of this year. But why is that important? It's important because it uses even less power. It uses a tiny amount of power, and it's even easier for crew to use. And if we're going to adopt technologies onto vessels, whatever kinds of technologies they may be, they need to be fit for purpose. And that doesn't just mean being capable of doing the job that they're designed to do, but also capable of being operated by crew day in, day out, week in, week out, year in, year out, reliably, simply, and cost effectively. And that's what we put a lot of effort into. My background, I've been involved in this industry, in the ballast water side of this industry, since 2008. And if you told me that in 2021 we'd only just be getting to the point where we were starting to look at compliance monitoring, I'd have probably laughed at you and said you cannot be serious. But that's where we are today. So technology has had to evolve, and we've continued to evolve.
Thank you very much, Andrew, for that good introduction. And we'll probably ask you some questions about what's coming next later in the roundtable. Next, I want to introduce Kathy Wick from the Port of Virginia. She is the Chief Development and Public Affairs Officer. Port of Virginia, congratulations on winning the Port Marine Environmental Protection Award. So with that, Kathy, can you introduce yourself and a little bit about what is the focus on Port of Virginia these days and what you see the future will bring?
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon. I have the pleasure of, my title doesn't always explain exactly what I do. I have 4 teams that I have the pleasure of leading here at the port: government relations, economic development, but also sustainability and our emergency response. So very proud of the team leading the way on our sustainability efforts. I think that's probably the impetus of our being a recipient this year. We've recently done a look at our emissions reductions, and we used 2017 as a baseline. We've reduced our emissions by 27% over the last 4 years, and that's just by doing the right thing for the right reasons. But now we're becoming more intentional about it, and we've set a goal to be at net zero by 2040. And that's come about through really using new technologies, using hybrid shuttle carriers, electric rail-mounted gantry cranes, converting from the traditional diesel equipment being used on terminal. We're also, some folks mentioned earlier, hydrogen. We're starting to look at hydrogen. We're starting to look at battery storage on terminal. We're looking at an LNG bunkering pilot with one of our shipping lines, really trying to look at scope 1 and scope 2 and scope 3 down the road and how we can be the best partner. We're also using new technologies like a truck reservation system where we're able to measure the entrance of our motor carriers throughout the day to reduce idling outside the terminal, outside the gate. We've implemented a barge service to take trucks off the road between here and one of our inland facilities. So we're sort of just looking at every aspect and every opportunity where we can make a difference in really contributing to that reduction in emissions, either directly or through work with our partners, whether that be our customers or our other transportation partners like the shipping lines, the railroads, or the motor carriers. So we're very pleased to be part of the solution. I do see some challenges ahead, and we want to continue to work with our customers and partners to solve those. I was fascinated by some of the discussions earlier and very pleased to see the level of collaboration, and look forward to talking about that a little bit more as we get into the meat of our topics today. So thanks so much for having me, and thanks so much for honoring the work that we've been doing. Look forward to participating the rest of the afternoon.
Thank you very much, Kathy. And I'm sure we'll discuss more how the ports and as a sort of integral part of the maritime transportation system, logistics chains, is a critical component of, you know, improving the efficiency and hence the less the environmental impact of shipping in the future. Next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Karen Purnell. She's the Managing Director of ITOF, the International Tanker Owners Pollution Federation Limited. So, of course, a key organization in reducing the environmental impact of any spills or things from shipping and in the maritime. Dr. Purnell, can you introduce a little bit about your organization? And you also, as the winner of the individual Marine Environmental Protection Award, you also excelled yourself to be a leader in this field.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. And I have to say, it's a real honor to have been given this award. But I have to say, I think it's also on behalf of the team that I accept this, and that's the team at ITOF. And ITOF is, in fact, it's an organization that was first brought about from the Torrey Canyon. And I know that there's nobody here that's of the age where they can remember the Torrey Canyon incident that occurred off the coast of the UK. But at that time, there was no real understanding of spill response. There was no compensation mechanism in place. And so all of those systems were put in place, and ITOF was born at that time to help administer one of those compensation regimes. And for the last 50 years, we have worked to, very closely with the IMO to uphold those conventions and to promote good practice in preparedness and response. So ITOF is, in fact, a very small company. We're a group of not-for-profit scientists based in London, and we're all scientists. And we get called by the insurer of the ship following an accident, and we travel all over the world, and we give advice to the authorities there on the best ways to prevent and minimize pollution damage in the aftermath of an incident. And our portfolio ranges from everything from crude oil to coal to cows. So it's not just incidents involving tankers. And actually, our team are out at the moment in Sri Lanka attending the container ship incident, the Express Pearl, with extraordinary pictures of knee-deep piles of nurdles, those little plastic beads all over the beaches. So we have some very challenging things to deal with. Thinking in terms of the challenges for ITOF going forward, then yes, we've been talking a lot about carbon neutral and alternative fuels, and it's been fascinating to listen to some of the presentations earlier. So I think given that ITOF, the majority of incidents that ITOF actually attends are fuel oil spills from ships other than tankers, then clearly and hopefully ITOF's lifespan is limited. So it therefore means that we need to be growing in concert with risks of the future, pollution risks of the future. So in the team, we're keeping a close eye on alternative fuels and what that may mean in terms of response and risk. we also know that whilst ships are carrying things across the sea, then the things they are carrying could end up on shorelines and in the water. So the variety of things that we need to prepare to respond to is growing, and our team need to make sure that they've got the skill set to develop with that. So I think those are the kind of things that we see on the horizon, Jan. So thank you for asking.
Thanks so much, Dr. Purnell. Yeah, and I think especially on your last comment, we see that with the current incidents outside the Pacific Northwest, where you're often not clear what's in the different containers that ships are carrying as well. I also see that we actually have a fifth panelist joining us as well. So this is Hannah Eichen, representing Congressman Jim Himes, who won the Government Marine Protection Award. So Hannah, glad you could join us, and we're just sort of doing the first introduction of the NAMEPA winners and introducing themselves. And I'll let you get a chance to get situated, and then maybe I'll go to Longji now, and then go to you, and you can give a little introduction about what the Congressman and his office is doing as well when it comes to maritime transportation and the marine environment. So welcome. Longji, next I want to introduce you, and of course for those who were at the Future Vision panel as well, we're introduced to you and your company. But first of all, again, I want to congratulate Dorian LPG as the winner of the Maritime Industry Marine Environment Protection Award. And maybe you can introduce a little bit about Dorian LPG as a ship owner and some of the key issues that facing Dorian LPG when it comes to the marine environment.
Thank you, Jan. Appreciate you. And I want to thank NAMEPA again for hosting this powerful panel to carry out these conversations, which I feel are very important. And we are honored to be the recipient of the Marine Protection Award. I give credit to our in-house technical marine team and our performance department. Just a little bit about Dorian LPG. We are an owner and operator of 22 very large gas carriers. 21 of those are owned. One is time chartered in, but we also commercially operate 25 VLGCs via our Helios pool. We maintain our offices in Stamford, are headquartered in Stamford, Connecticut. We also have offices in Copenhagen, London, and our Helios team, and Greece, and our Athens, and our Helios team sits in Singapore. I did speak about decarbonization as the main focus on in the shipping industry today, mainly pointing out two indices that IMO has adopted, the EEXI and CII, which are measures that put limits on carbon emissions, both from vessel design and from the operations of our vessels. So we are focused on meeting those targets. And I feel like our technical team, our marine team, and our performance team have done a good job of taking in all the data that our ships spit out, because our ships are equipped with a lot of data collecting devices, which we use to monitor our vessels for performance, to enhance our efficiency and therefore lower our consumption and emissions. We have been proactive and staying ahead of the curve when it comes to new technical measures and new regulations. And we know new regulations are what tend to shape the future of shipping, especially with vessel design. So we continue to collaborate with most of our partners, like engine manufacturers, charterers, our customers and clients, to find ways to be compliant and to keep our assets performing so that we are not stuck with stranded assets. So sort of a risk mitigation kind of factor so that our vessels are compliant and performing. We've also taken steps to keep ourselves accountable by refinancing 155 million of our debt and linking that to emissions reduction, so sustainably linked loans. And we continue to use data to enhance our ships in selecting when we are going to put them into dock, to add polish to self-polishing paint to our vessels, routing systems, just taking in all that data. As you know, with data, it's always measure and manage. So we do our best to do that and stay compliant. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Longji, for that good introduction. Then for you, Hannah, not last but not least, I think our most distinguished winner of the Environment Award, Congressman Jim Hines, and you representing him. And can you maybe briefly introduce yourself and the congressman, and maybe some of the work going on in Congress and with the current focus on the maritime transportation, and also meeting our greenhouse gas reduction goals and environmental issues.
Yes, of course. And thank you so much. And the congressman sends his apologies. I'm sure most of you are aware that here in Washington, D.C. today, we're in the process of hopefully soon voting for massive legislation that will transform every industry, including maritime shipping. And so that's why the congressman cannot be here and join us today. So I'm his legislative director. And so I'm here in Washington, D.C., kind of following everything that's been going on, making sure his priorities get included. For folks that don't know, the congressman represents Connecticut's 4th District and has done so since 2009. He serves on the Financial Services Committee, where he's chair of the National Security, International Development, Monetary Policy Subcommittee. And then he also serves on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. As a member, he's always prioritized kind of the environment. We have, represent the Connecticut coastline, and it's very fragile and affected by everything that goes on. And he's always been a big champion here. This week, as I just mentioned, we'll be hopefully voting on the massive $1 trillion infrastructure bill. We're hopefully trying to vote on that tonight at some point, but it's a little fluid right now. But within that, it'll include billions and billions for things like port resiliency, for clean energy programs, and environmental sustainability work as well. And so, today, kind of, I'm sure you'll notice me looking off to the side here and there a little bit, because this is currently ongoing and something we've got, developing by the minute here. But really, again, Congressman is very so appreciative to be given this award, and hopefully he might be able to hop on and join later this evening. So, wanted to thank you all again.
Yeah, thank you, Hannah, for taking time off your busy schedule, for joining the roundtable. And yeah, I think we all look forward to what happens, with the legislation and the government, the collaboration on this, because as been said many times, collaboration is really the future most important fuel for the maritime industry. So this takes effort from all of us. With that, I would like to open up more for questions as well, and also for the audience. Please put in any questions you might have in the chat, and we can also come to those as well. But my first question is, of course, even in your introduction, you said a lot of the key issues facing your organization and company. But even outside of that, of course, the shipping industry, the maritime, has certainly been in the focus since the last year because of the supply chain issue. Ever Given gets stuck in the Panama Canal, other incidents. So both in the short term and the long term, what do you think is some of the critical issues really facing the future of shipping, and that we really need to address? And yeah, I'll sort of open it up for anyone that want to take a stab at it first, or else I'll just volunteer one of you.
I can take a shot since it's my industry. So I think the main focus of the shipping industry right now is meeting the IMO's goals for decarbonization. What we have done in our kind of sphere is we've installed scrubber vessels. We're also looking at alternative fuels. Most of the ship owners now are looking to order new vessels that burn dual fuel, giving them that fuel flexibility in the future to be able, so that they're not stranded or stuck with a single fuel type that might phase out because it doesn't meet compliance. So that's kind of the main focus now, is investing in those new technologies, but at the same time having sources available to us to access those fuels that will be coming online, those zero carbon fuels like ammonia, blue hydrogen, all that stuff, and battery technology to help with the propulsion systems. All those are long-term down the road, but things that we continue to explore in our industry specifically. Yeah, so that's the main thing.
And Jan, if I could, I think for ports, we face similar challenges in wanting to be able to provide the best resources and infrastructure to support the decisions that the shipping lines are making, but it's happening so rapidly and new technologies are evolving all the time. Like I said, we're doing a pilot on LNG, but we're reluctant to invest in long-term infrastructure that costs nearly $1 billion when that might not be the fuel choice 5 years from now. And so trying to look at the payback period on some of these larger infrastructure investments to aid and provide the resource, it is challenging. And I think another thing that is who's really driving it, right? Like IMO has these targets, but you're starting to see globally different countries come up with their own idea of what the targets are or what the best technology or fuel choice, right? And so who's truly in the market going to choose the winners and losers and win, right? Because if you see, you know, what's going on with this conference in Glasgow and the Global Maritime Forum, I think there's some concern that the IMO is starting to lose its leadership position because others are sort of rising and wanting to do it even more rapidly if possible, or again, wanting to choose the winner and losers in the fuel choice debate. And so for ports, it's hard to keep up and to have that crystal ball that says, how do we best plan and support our partners moving forward? So I see that as a continuous challenge over the next several years, if not the next 10 years, really, as we see these evolutions take place.
To unmute myself, hang on, there we go. I would echo that, Kathy, not just from your standpoint, but also from the standpoint of the technology providers. To develop these new technologies costs millions of dollars. And we're asking investors and we're asking banks or whoever it might be to loan that money, to invest that money, to create these technologies. And often there is great uncertainty as to whether that technology will be the one that's adopted. And if you just look at the situation with ballast water treatment, I believe at one point there were 100+ companies, and the average spend per company to develop an effective ballast water treatment and get it certified, then get it recertified, and then get it recertified again when the regulations changed again, and then get it recertified again when you had to do it for Coast Guard, and so on and so forth, easily in excess of $30 million. Now that's an awful lot of money that got invested, and only a handful of those companies are going to see any kind of return. Only a handful of those investors are going to see any kind of return. And now that's not a good environment in which to encourage new investors to come and new technical innovation, new people to put money in to create the kinds of technology that we're going to need for a greener shipping future. So we need clearer direction from the powers that be. And I would agree with you, IMO has done itself no favors in the last 15 years. The Convention for Ballast Water Treatment came forward in 2004, you know, I even forget when it was ratified. Was it 2016 or 2017? At that point, it was the longest running unratified convention in IMO history. And we still haven't got past the experience building phase. We're not fully into implementation and so on and so forth. The committees are still meeting to discuss things. That's not good enough. You know, we need to move more quickly, and we need to give technology providers a better lead so that they can provide the products that Kathy needs and the industry needs.
Thank you, Andrew. I think it's a very important comment, and also you, Kathy, about some of the issues facing. And Andrew, in some ways, yeah, you took one of the questions sort of out of my mouth, because you sort of represent the technology provider, and the uncertainty in and the cost of developing these new technology, fuels, whatever is going to drive the industry, is something we definitely need to get understood. And hopefully some of the discussions can help. But as I say, we need to have certainty and predictability for the people that make the decision. Dr. Purnell.
When you talk about, well,
yeah.
I was just going to say, when you talk about payback, in my industry, I think it's even harder to sort of make a correlation between payback and the need to maintain focus and investment in preparing for oil spills and accidents, because the numbers are going down more and more and more, which is absolutely right. But of course, as they become less and less, then the drivers for maintaining that level of preparedness, the experience, the hands-on experience gets less and less and less. But my goodness, when it does happen, then what cost reputation? And the need to not lose sight of the fact that there are these risks out there, and that a single incident, particularly if, God forbid, that happened in the Arctic, with the focus on the risks in pristine environments like that, can do a great deal of damage to the industry as a whole. So it's sort of, you know, how do we encourage the industry and governments to maintain that that focus on continuing to be prepared and invest, as Andrew was saying, in R&D to approach those concerns of the future.
Excellent point. And I think we all know that the industry has always been driven by accident and disasters, and that's often when, unfortunately, the maritime industry is in the news if there are some incidents. And of course, I think overall the safety performance has improved a lot in my time in the industry, at least. But still, these things will unfortunately happen. So maybe to close out this part, Hannah, you know, a little bit, I wouldn't call you an outsider, but maybe not so in tune with the maritime industry as many of the other panelists and attendees. What do you think are some of the key urgent issues facing the maritime industry and the maritime environment from your perspective?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, and appreciate it. You know, here on the Hill, I think we're juggling lots of different issues as they come up, and so. You know, I certainly am slightly familiar with a lot of these issues, but, you know, I think something that the Congressman would really say is that climate change is going to be a huge issue. You know, as we have these more extreme storms, they're going to continue to threaten ports and to threaten coastal infrastructure that we have. And, you know, I think that's one of the big priorities in this massive infrastructure bill that we're working on. Is to you know, improve the resilience of maritime transportation systems and improve the resilience of ports and support these programs. You know, we're just now getting text from this bill, but it looks like there's going to be something like 17 to 20 billion in it specifically for port infrastructure. And you know, it looks like another hundreds of millions for maritime administration here, you know, for grants to support supply chain resilience and reduce congestion. You know, there's lots in it on kind of development of offshore wind support infrastructure and, you know, to make sure that ports continue to kind of reduce the impact that they have on the environment.
Thank you so much. Those good comments, and yeah, as I said, we look forward to something positive come out of and focus on policy and the right policy instead of just politics. I think is really what the goal should be for all of us. The next question, I think I'll start to ask you, Longi, as representative ship owners. You know, because we talked about the decarbonization and maybe the other big D and transformation industries, the digitalization and sort of the use of data and the connected ship to make better decisions improve the well-being of the seafarers, as well as improving the operations. What key benefits do you see, and what risks do you also see, sort of, to make sure that the integrity of the data is maintained? And of course, as some of the other earlier panelists included, is about the cyber risks or other sort of risk in operations of using data, and how to protect the integrity of the data and verify the data. So what is Dorian LPG doing in order to take advantage of these new the new technology and the new opportunities there?
Thank you, Han. What we have done is we've established a performance monitoring department, which we think started last year, late 2019 or early 2020. And what they're tasked with doing is taking in all our data that our ships spit out, analyzing that data in order to enhance our performance. And it's also high frequency data, so there's live monitoring of that data, so that we can schedule cleanings, and they do issue like weekly reports, so we're on top of that. And then they're also following new technologies that are coming out. Then they're offering us information on when we need to clean our vessels, what routing to use. Thankful, because we have third-party weather systems that tell us what the weather's like along certain routes and how to optimize our routes. So that has been the key benefit of the data, just optimizing our routes, enhancing our performance, monitoring our emissions, and making sure that our vessels are consuming less, and how to be more efficient so that we consume less and therefore reduce our emissions, following what new technologies are available to us. And the main thing is, as always, is cost, right? So the cost of these systems, and there's a bunch of systems available online. When we went into the market looking for new data new devices to put on our ships, we had all these offers from machine learning to AI, all those buzzwords coming out. So the key thing is to understand what your business needs, what it needs to perform and to be compliant, and then investing in those needs while maintaining optionality. Because as things happen, regulations are going to change, right? We just talked about the IMO versus COP26, and I think the IMO takes its marching orders from COP26 now. And the thing with COP26 is that it's somewhat whoever is political in a sense, right? So like last year, the United States wasn't part of the Paris Agreement, but this year they're back in it. So as those things change, then we have different voices coming to the table, and they're trying to implement different things. So the regulations change. So that's why it's important for us to understand the framework. So when we're investing in these technologies, we're investing in technologies that are sustainable long-term for us. And then the main risk, to point out, is obviously cybersecurity. As Cynthia pointed out in her discussion, we're facing an enemy that we can't see now. Before it was piracy, but now it's cyber piracy in a sense, right? And now you have to be able to trust these data managers, who are sometimes third parties or who control that data, and you share control of that data with them. So it's been the ability to trust them. And Cynthia had a good point when she said it's kind of, we all have to put all hands on deck, because whatever affects one person is going to affect all of us. Because if they get into one system, is the Internet of Things, everything's connected. Now we're all vulnerable. So I think that's the big issue, is like all of us putting our heads together and making sure that we can come up with ways to protect the data, because it all sits in the cloud.
Yeah, Jan, if I can jump in, this is Kathy.
Please, yeah.
So we've really focused a lot on data and digitization. I mentioned earlier we have a truck reservation system that has really helped. It's integrated with our gate and our vessel operations, so that there's predictability all the way through our system. We're now looking at using Waze technology to link into our reservation system, so that there's GPS predictability for outside the gate for the motor carriers, looking at the optimal time to make their reservation, or if there's something that occurs en route, right, that they can change their reservation or their path to get to the terminal because of an accident or a storm or some other impact. We're also starting to do that on the vessel side. So we've started implementing a vessel mooring tool and berth optimization tool that's looking at patterns. You all may or may not know this, but the major container shipping lines stay on time about 14% of the time right now because of all of the congestion at our partner ports. And, you know, we're not always the first in or last out call, so something upstream. So what we're using the data for is predictive analytics, right? What are the trends that are causing these delays, and can we better predict so that we can optimize the berth and where we place certain vessels because of what's coming next? And then we're trying to work with the ports to the north and south of us, because we're in the mid-Atlantic, on and the shipping lines on stowage and how they're stacking the containers on the ship so that when they arrive at each port, we can optimize how quickly we're able to turn and get them out to their next destination. So the next step, we have a grant actually from the federal government to look at autonomous vehicles, and with this reservation system and the connectivity to the yard, what happens when you no longer have a driver who's swiping in or using that GPS technology that we're setting up? Once an autonomous vehicle, what changes do we need to make? Not that we're making them today, but when that technology is ready, right? And then we're ready to handle it. So to your point, Longji, the cyber piece of it though, the more technology and data dependent we become, the more it keeps us up at night. What happens if there's penetration? So I want to thank the Coast Guard, really has put a large focus on this in their port readiness committee structure. And they partner with us each year with the shipping lines and the local government folks to do cyber exercises. We've done both tabletop and live exercises where we look at what's the alternative, how quickly can we shut down and put up a firewall between our systems and those of our shipping lines or our beneficial cargo owner customers, so that there's not penetration, as Long G said, you're in our system, you're in everybody's system. And now that we have all rail mounted gantry cranes that run on algorithms 24/7, if something comes in that shuts those down, how do we move the containers? What's the workaround? So we also have a large focus on that and partner as much as we can with our customers and other stakeholders to make sure that everybody's ready when it happens and we're not caught flat-footed.
Thank you, Kathy. I think, as you say, we learned for certain that, you know, the supply chain is not any stronger than its weakest link or where there is any bottleneck. So yeah, the key issue, collaboration and with all the different stakeholders is a key to improve the efficiency and how vulnerable we are really to any disruption in any of those links. I want to ask Dr. Purnell maybe another question as well, because you touched upon that sort of the safety performance of the industry has improved, and now of course there is again a focus on, you know, ramping up shipping and a focus on, you know, getting back in action and, you know, supplying the demand. As you say, is there a risk that we become a little bit complacent because we have reduced the incidents and so forth and not focus on the competence and the availability to handle any unforeseen accidents because we are focused on the short-term demands and the less risky safety performance maybe?
Yeah, I think the short answer is yes, there is that risk, because there are, as for exactly the reasons I said, there are fewer incidents, fewer oil spills. I mean, it's incredible to think that in the 1970s we had a major oil spill, more than 700 tons every fortnight. and thank goodness we're in very different times now where you know, you're unlucky if you have one or two in a year. So I definitely think that you know, we need to be very careful not to become complacent. And if you think you know, for areas like the Arctic, being particularly focused on what we need to do to remain prepared there, because you know, that is a very sensitive environment. you have crews that are traversing that area that potentially have very little experience of dealing with those kind of conditions. And so for us, one of the higher risks, and not the oil companies or the big tanker owners or the big shipping industries that do focus very heavily on safety and risk, but potentially those ships that are doing bulk carrying of ores, for example, from Greenland to China, and the experience of the crews there. I think, touching on a point I think Tom made about crews and ability to attract people into the industry. If we can't, there's this link all the way down. If we can't attract really good crews to ships, then you start having issues with quality crews, and if the quality of the crews are not as high as they should be, and the focus is also not on preparedness from the state side as well as from the shipping industry side, the chances of being able to respond to something, an Arctic route for when a ship is in transit is really remote. And then, of course, as I said, if you end up with an incident in the Arctic, it affects not just that country and that ship owner, but the entire shipping industry is then effectively, if you pardon the pun, tarred by that incident. So I think it is something we mustn't lose sight of, and that we do need to make sure that we retain the focus and investment.
Yeah, totally agree as well. Andrew, you had a lot of experience with the ballast water treatment system and the regulations, and maybe, as you said, there are lessons learned from that implementation, but also are there other environmental regulations or technologies that the industry needs to prepare for, that you as a company as well are thinking how technology can help the compliance, but also meeting some of these targets for safety and environmental protection?
Yes, I mean, as a company, Ecochlor is looking to broaden its footprint beyond simply ballast water management systems, and there are a range of things we're looking at. But I think Longi and Kathy and Karen have highlighted some of the things that we as an industry have to focus on. We have to cut consumption, be more efficient, reduce emissions, find ways to make shipping greener, because it has not the best of reputations internationally at the moment. And I think I'm being kind when I put it that way. But there are technologies out there, and we need, as I said before, clear direction so that ship owners know what to prioritize. Technology providers know, what they have to deliver, and then we need a timetable that is not there to punish ship owners. We don't want that, but what we want is a timetable that leads to reasonable enforcement within a reasonably well-defined timeline, so that when you're trying to bring investment in to deliver these things that everybody agrees are necessary to reduce carbon footprint, to improve efficiency, and so on and so forth, when you're asking for people to invest in that, they know they're not going to do that in vain. They're not, it's not going to be a situation that they've retired long before actually compliance is required. Compliance needs to come earlier. And we have learned some triggers. If you compare ballast water management systems, which have taken forever to get off the ground, with scrubbers. Now, scrubbers had a very different dynamic, didn't it? Here you had a very rapid rise in the development and then the deployment of the technology, because the fuel price delta that effectively paid for that for ship owners was a major incentive. And that enabled ship owners to get behind technology very quickly. All right, there were some lessons to be learned from the first generation stuff and some accommodations to be made, and we'll do better second time around kind of thing. But there's a lesson to be learned there. If we give the right incentives, if we provide the right environment, ship owners will adopt environmental technologies. They want to become greener. Longi's given a wonderful explanation as to what Dorian is trying to do, and it's all fantastic. And if we can encourage more to be like that, then we're in a good place. But it requires leadership, it requires direction, it requires funding, it requires timelines, and it requires compliance enforcement. And when we get to that point, then we'll know we really are doing something positive about our marine environment.
Thank you, Andrew. Also good points. I think we have about 5 minutes left of the session. Time goes fast when you have interesting discussions and great comments. What I want to close out with is sort of. Pardon? So yeah, I want to close out with one question to all the panelists, which is sort of close to my heart and sort of focus on my work in the last year is what Longi also presented earlier, is sort of the decarbonization efforts, both the short-term measures, EEXI and carbon intensity index, but really the sort of, as was mentioned earlier, the strategy that the IMO came out with in 2018 about the 50% reduction in absolute emission by 2050 and a 70% reduction in the carbon intensity by that time has now been questioned, and many means it's not aggressive enough. But I know it's not always easy to make any crystal ball, but what do you feel is a realistic ambition for shipping when it comes to decarbonization? Full net zero by 2030, by 2050, or are we already trying to do too much? Just a quick round, and I'll start with you, Dr. Purnell, just in going clockwise from where I see, and just 30 seconds a minute or so, if you have a crystal ball or your opinion.
Well, I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not in shipping, but I would like to say 2030. I think if the planets align so that you have government and industry working together, and exactly as Andrew was saying, they support each other in the journey, we've got more chance of making 2030. Otherwise, I think it might be nearer 2050.
Kathy, what about you from your perspective? What do you think are realistic?
Well, if I go with Karen's reasoning, it will definitely be 2050, because industry and government working together is almost impossible. I mean, I would love to see it. I would, but I think and you know what, if it were just one country, right? I think Hannah can attest to, we're seeing more cooperation around this in the United States. And I think there are certain other countries that are coalescing around it and looking for solutions and trying to work with industry. But on a global scale, we're just not there. And I think the diversity in perspectives on that among the different countries that support shipping, we've got to figure out a way to globally get our heads around that and be more strategic in how we're approaching it together, not just industry and government, but all of us together working on it. You know, the port in Rotterdam and the port in Norfolk, not the port in Norfolk and the port in New York, right? So I think I'll hedge, right? I'll go 2040. I'll split the baby. And we'll see where we get. I don't know the over under, but that's where I'll stick, 2040.
Great. Hannah, what about you from your point of view? And of course, shipping is a very international industry. It takes collaboration, but it's certainly in the end, the politicians and the regulators as well need to have the right focus. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm, with these kind of, as I said earlier, but with these infrastructure and reconciliation bills we're working on, I think, hopefully there's a lot of fighting that everyone has seen in the news right now, but I think we really will come to an agreement, and there are a lot of tax incentives here to work with industry on this. I think it very much depends. I'm really excited about President Biden's 2035 goals, and I hope that we can make it push through these bills and get have everyone on board for this. So I think I'm gonna go with the president's goal of 2035 here.
Thank you. And Longji, as a ship owner, representing a ship owner, which is dealing with this on a daily basis and really need the certainty as well and the plans. What's your thought about this from Dorian LPG's perspective?
Well, as a public company, we're more into what we expect to happen versus what we hope would happen. So at the same time, you have to understand, as Andrew pointed out, we need clear directions because regulations evolve over time. And our assets are long-lived assets. So when we're trying to make investments, we have to make sure that those investments meet those regulations long-term. So I would say if the incentives, what's the key here is the incentives. If the incentives are right, just like how the ballast, the scrubber systems and the spreads and the monies, the capital incentives were correct, that push for that. If the incentives and the market measures align with the politics, which is an evolving animal in itself, then we could see something by 20. I'll hedge with Kathy here and say 2040. So hoping, as for the sake of our planet, we only have one planet. I hope that the push happens earlier so that we meet those targets, which I still don't think are aggressive enough. That's my personal opinion, not the opinion of Dorian, because I hope to be a perfect steward for the environment. And I love working at Dorian because we have that kind of proactive thinking and we can hold ourselves accountable, given our sustainable linked loans that we're taking, to make sure that we're doing everything before it happens. We're trying to stay ahead of the curve. And so that's part of the reasons why I work here and I enjoy working here as well. So yes, 2040 is where I hedge, but I hope that things align sooner, and it has to be availability of those zero carbon fuels. So therefore funding has to go towards that. It has to be the port infrastructure to supply those fuels, and just the incentives have to align with the goals. That's basically it.
Very well said. And then Andrew, from your perspective, being also very veteran in the maritime industry, and I'll give you the last word.
Thank you. I was always taught that a target had to be ABC: achievable, believable, and conceivable. It had to be achievable, you had to believe you could do it, and you had to conceive of how you would do it. I'm going to add a few more to that. I'm going to add D, E, I, and P. D, deliverable. E, enforceable. I, international, because we've got to do it all around the planet. And P, political. And because Kathy and Longji are pessimists and have gone for 2040, I am going to demonstrate my credentials as an optimist, because I've got to tell you, if you're in ballast water management for the last 15, 20 years, you've been an optimist. So I'm going to demonstrate my optimistic principles and go 2039.
Great. Great. I think they stopped the recording, so we won't have to take anybody for the word. But I really appreciate everybody's nice comments.
No. They're not off the hook yet. Absolutely not. Especially with Andrew parsing like that. We've been talking about the decarbonization of the maritime industry, and Hannah, you mentioned that, President Biden's agenda. What can we expect to hear in the next couple of weeks in Glasgow? Because I'm heading over tomorrow. What can we expect to hear from President Biden and John Kerry in the next couple of weeks when it comes to the U.S. position on climate change?
I think so much of what you want to talk about here is his real commitment to being an international partner again, and the commitment of America to work with our allies internationally, and also work with the countries that we have with China on this, that are these big emissions, or that are releasing these emissions. And so I think that's going to be a big part of his push as well. And hopefully, again, we've had this big push today. I know he's on his way to Rome now, but really wanted to push through these two bills here in Congress, and we're really hoping that we have an opportunity to vote on them and get them passed, and deliver kind of the proof that this country is back and is willing to be an international and global partner to fight climate change and help us realize these the immediate responses that we need and solutions to get there.
Well, thank you for that. I know I put you on the spot there, but I'm an equal opportunity put you on the spot person. Kathy, today has been an absolute delight to see the interaction amongst all the panels and panelists. And one thing that sometimes comes up as a bit of a frustration is there seems to be a separation of church and state between shipping and ports. How can we reduce those barriers? Because as has been demonstrated in the last few months, we are one logistics transportation system. And I think having those open conversations and the understanding of each other's challenges and opportunities is so important. And you've done a great job of it today. But what suggestions could you have for shipping and ports to become better integrated?
Yeah, great question. So as you can tell, we really try to do that at the Port of Virginia. We collaborate sort of across the board, but I think ports in general have to think less provincially, right? We're a network. And so, for instance, we compete with each other for these infrastructure dollars. We compete with each other for navigation dollars. We're always we're sort of conditioned to think about gaining a competitive edge against the other ports to be the port of choice. But I think you can only think that way to a point. You have to really keep in context. And maybe it's easier for us because we're a state authority that has its own dedicated terminal operators. So our main mission is to move cargo to and through the Commonwealth of Virginia into the Midwest. And then we're also pretty balanced in our imports and exports. So I think one of the things that we really have to get our arms around is how do we get the private terminal operators whose mission is profits, not necessarily the movement of the cargo, to think less provincially and show them how that collaboration with other ports in the network and with the shipping lines can be both beneficial to the overall network and beneficial to them financially. And maybe some of these additional infrastructure dollars will help because we'll still compete, but there'll be more to go around and we'll all be more on a level playing field from that perspective. Not sure, but we'll keep working at it.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you to the panel and to Jan Hagen for your excellent insights and sharing with us. And again, congratulations to all of you. But we'll be seeing you again soon during our awards. Now we're going to turn over to our chairman, Joe Hughes, who's going to do a wrap up, followed by our annual general meeting to which everyone's welcome. And then 6 o'clock will be our award ceremony. So, Joe, take it away. Last but not least is the Environment Innovation Marine Environment Protection Award, and it's sponsored by ABS and awarded to Ecochlor for their commitment to saving coastal ecosystems for over 20 years. Their newest development is the filterless EcoOne, which launched in April of this year. Which not only eliminates the spread of invasive species, which being from Michigan and the Great Lakes, I'm very conscious of, but also reduces greenhouse gas emissions. And now accepting the Environment Innovation and Marine Environment Protection Award is Ecochlor CEO Andrew Marshall, also known as Bigley.
I think you probably need to explain that, Carleen. It's because of my Carleen likes my impersonation of Donald Trump. So just so that everybody's aware. Thank you to NAMEPA. Thank you to everybody that was involved in this process. We set out to develop EcoOne in response to what we felt the next generation BWMS needed to look like: better for the crew, better for the environment, lower greenhouse gas emissions, easier to use, making compliance easier. These are all buzz phrases, but it underpinned what we felt we needed to do. And they do say timing is everything. And no sooner had we started the program for developing EcoOne than COVID came along. And there was an almighty throwing of hands up in the air, wondering how we were going to get all the testing done in the teeth of a global pandemic. But we did it. And that's a testament to everybody at Ecochlor, the whole team. It's also testament to the cooperation we had with ship owners, numerous ship owners who helped us with the program. I must give special mention to the Angelicusis group, who were just fantastic in making vessels available for us for testing and putting up with our frequent changes of plan and last minute emergencies that we all needed to deal with. And I would just, as well as thanking everybody within Ecochlor itself for their special efforts, because everybody burnt some midnight oil to get this done in record time, I do think one man deserves special mention, and that's my immediate predecessor, Steve Candito, who stepped down as CEO last week of Ecochlor, but did a fantastic job over the last 4 years, taking the company to where it is today, and who listened patiently to my constant whining about needing to develop this product and supported me wholeheartedly in ensuring that we got the budget and the time to do it. And it would not have happened without Steve's input. So I want to pass on a personal and corporate and NAMEPA thank you to Steve for all his efforts in that regard.
Well, congratulations, Bigley, and we look forward to your continued support on and participation on our board of directors and working closely with the Ecochlor family. I want to congratulate all of the recipients for their very well-deserved recognition today. And before I sign off, I think Rear Admiral John Mauger would like to say a few words. Admiral?